What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this Weedeater trimmer, and the problem is it's been in storage and unused for a long time, and now it won't start. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this trimmer. However, it may not be the exact repair that you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. This is a very unique looking trimmer, so I would like to get this thing working again. Now it is missing a trimmer head, but I'm not going to buy a replacement until I know it's going to run. So the information we have to work with is that it was in storage and it doesn't start. Now this sort of problem is usually related to the carburetor, so I'm going to remove it from the engine and inspect it for any problems. However, I do want to check to make sure that the fuel filter in the tank is still attached to the fuel line, but in this case it looks to be still attached, so that's not the problem. The reason is if the filter comes off the line, the screen in the carburetor will clog up and cause a starting problem. Before I remove the carburetor, I do want to put some fuel in its throat and try starting it just to make sure that it even runs. If it does run, I'll continue with the disassembly. Fortunately for us, it does run. Now if it didn't run, then I would probably check the engine for spark. The next thing I want to look at is the pump side of the carburetor. Now after taking it apart, I can see it's very clean, which is great news, and that the inlet screen is clean and clear of any debris as well. Next, I'll look at the pumping diaphragm, which is still on the top plate. It looks to be in great shape, and what I'm looking for is that these two check valve flaps are parallel with the rest of the diaphragm. In order to do that, just look at it from the side and see if the flaps are above or below the rest of the diaphragm. Now this one looks to be fine, so I'm going to reuse it. Next, I'll remove the plate covering the metering diaphragm. After taking the diaphragm off the carburetor, I can see it's a bit stiff and has a few wrinkles in it. Now, even though I can move the middle of it, it should be a lot more flexible than this. I should not be able to make any noises with it, so that means that this one needs to be replaced. Now, before I throw it away, I want to look at the stem in the middle just to make sure that I buy one that has the same length. Before I replace the metering diaphragm, I do want to make sure that fuel will flow through the screen and past the needle. What I want to do is put some fuel in the screen, press down on the rocker arm, and make sure that the fuel will disappear from the screen. Unfortunately, it's not flowing through the screen, so what I'm going to do is remove the needle, rocker arm, and the screen so I can clear the fuel passage with a wire and also soak the screen in some carburetor cleaner. Now, you might want to also lightly scratch the screen surface to break up any varnish that might be there. Well, it looks like the fuel passage is already clear, so that means that the screen was the reason why the fuel wouldn't go through it. Now, after letting it soak for a while, I'm going to replace just the screen and test again if the fuel will flow through it. So it looks like the screen is letting fuel pass through it, so I'm now going to reassemble the carburetor along with a new metering diaphragm and then put everything back onto the engine. Now just be very careful when putting the spring and rocker arm assembly back together. If you lose the spring, it's almost impossible to find, and if you do lose it, you might as well buy a new carburetor. Another reason why this engine wouldn't start is if it was ran with straight gas and no oil. In that situation, the engine might run from 10 to 20 minutes depending on how much you were squeezing the throttle. The end result would be a scored piston and ring along with cylinder wall damage. Now this would reduce the engine's ability to compress the air-fuel mix and make it very difficult to start and run properly. Now before I reinstall the carburetor, I want to replace the fuel line. What I noticed was that the fuel line is beginning to harden up, probably due to gas containing ethanol, so I want to replace it with some Tygon line instead. Now to make it easier to install the fuel line, cut the end going into the tank at a sharp angle. Okay, I'm a little confused. It acts like it needs more fuel to get it to start, but it also acts like it's flooded. This is not a good situation, so what I'm going to do is start by adding more fuel to the engine by turning the single fuel adjustment screw counterclockwise about one turn, and then I'll try starting it again. So the idle was way too fast, and as I was trying to turn it down, it eventually died. But before that happened, it was acting like it was running out of fuel, even though I had purposefully added too much fuel so it wouldn't happen. I'll take some fuel out and try starting it one more time. So I tried several other adjustments to add more fuel and take some fuel away, and it's still running out of gas, so I'm thinking there's a carburetor problem. But before I go on, I want to do a compression test. Now you can buy one of these testers online for about $20. I want to see a number well over 75 psi, and if it's lower than that, it will show how worn out the engine actually is. So unfortunately, the number is very low, which means this engine is very worn out, and there's no point in replacing the carburetor with a new one. But there is another problem. This trimmer is so out of date, they no longer make the replacement carburetor. That means there's not much I can do for this thing. Out of curiosity, I want to remove the muffler and look at the piston and ring and find out what kind of damage this engine has taken. Now, if it's scored up, then the engine is too far gone to repair. But if there's none of that, then it's just normal wear that's gotten it to this point. So after rotating the engine a few times, I don't see any scoring on the piston and the ring, so that means that it was just normal wear that killed this engine. Now the cylinder walls might be fine with a little honing, and replacing the piston ring might get the compression good enough to run properly again. So my question is, what should I do with this thing? Should I literally throw it away, or should I put it on the curb for the next person? Or should I just replace the piston ring and run the carburetor through an ultrasonic cleaner and see if anything improves? Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I hope to see you in my next video.